Hey everyone, welcome to completing our income statement. So this will take us back to those good old days. This is just a good reminder of how we calculate many of these ratios that we'll be talking about soon, and also we'll discuss the earnings per share. So first we want to figure out which account goes first. Of course, we're going to start with our revenue. And with our revenue, we also want to understand what is the cost of that revenue. In other words, what's the cost of goods sold? Then we'll receive our gross profit. And now we're going to take a look at some operating expenses. So looks like we always have our selling expenses. In this case, we have research and development, so it looks like an operating expense. And we can't forget depreciation. Then we'll get our operating income. There might be other income that will be included, so we need to include that. Now we're at our earnings before interest and tax. So at this point, we can figure out our interest expense. We have our income before tax, so we're going to need to know what our taxes are. And finally, we have our shares outstanding, earnings per share. So once we've figured out where our accounts are going to go, we can start getting an understanding of the calculations. So revenue, and we'll put it on Excel first. That way we can do the math and then bring it back. So let's just move those accounts over into Excel, and we can start punching in some numbers. So for our revenue, it is our 4,416. Okay, and one thing to keep in mind is that these are all all the dollar amounts are in thousands of dollars. Okay, so that's going to be relevant when we figure out our earnings per share. But just remember that. And also we want to keep in mind that we need to have negative numbers or minus sign for numbers we want to subtract. So basically any of our costs or expenses have to be negative. So cost of goods sold, they give us that number. So again, because we need to make sure it's a negative, we're going to add that to our column. Okay, so negative 750,000. So with that, we should be able to figure out our gross profit. Okay, we're just going to add our revenue and add our expenses to that revenue. So now we have our gross profit, and now we need to include our operating expenses. So we have selling is about 77,572. Research and development is just over 4,000. And depreciation is about 31,000. Okay, so that should be able, now we should be able to figure out our operating income. So we take our gross profit, and again, we account for our operating expenses. Now we want to include our other income. So other income, about just over 1,000. That's going to be a positive number, right? So we're adding that to our income. So now we have our earnings before interest and expense. So we need to figure out our interest. I believe they give us that number. So interest expense, again, just a reminder, it is negative. Okay, so now we can figure out what our taxable income is going to be. Okay, so we just need to remove our taxes. Oh, let's see need to add that. That makes more sense. Okay, so our taxes, now they do give us the tax rate is 37.5%. Okay, so we're just going to multiply our income before tax times our tax rate. And we always want to make sure it's to the nearest dollar. But again, reminder, we have to make this negative. So we go ahead and make that negative. And now we can figure out our net income. Okay, so we're going to remove those taxes. That will give us our net income. and that's positive. Now finally, so our shares, our outstanding shares, okay, so this is it's not a dollar amount, it's the actual amount of shares that have been issued or sold, okay? And we want to figure out our earnings per share. Now, one thing is important to note, this is in, that's the total amount, it's not in thousands. So we have to convert that so that it is actually compatible with dividing our net income. So you could either multiply this by 1,000, or you can divide this by 1,000. That way they're both properly, compatible. So I'm going to, again, net income, our earnings per share is our net income divided by our earnings per share. So we're going to divide by our earnings per share, but we're going to divide our earnings per share by 1,000. So that way they're both in line. And here we have our earnings per share. Again, this is a dollar amount, and it's positive, about 77 cents. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and punch in those numbers. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We punched in our numbers. Make sure we got our negatives where they should be, and we have our shares of outstanding in the proper amount of units. Check. Great job. Thanks for watching, and happy financing.